Oasis with Don't Look Back in Anger. And you're listening to the 90s Rewind on 104.7 Rossendale Radio. And I'm joined by, quite frankly, a local legend. Paul Weller is with me. Burnley, played for Burnley throughout the 90s, and he's joining me now. And I've got to say, let's take away the magnificence of radio here. You're joining me from the car, Paul. I mean, you've pulled over nice and safe, yeah?
Oh yeah, I'm busy at work and so much going on at work. So I thought I'd come and sit out in one of the cars that I'm trying to sell.
This is the thing: is trying to make sure that you're balancing life and these media commitments. It must be blooming tricky. Now, of course, everybody around here knows your name. You were absolutely in the headlines throughout the sporting headlines throughout the 90s. Tell us about your time at Burnley.
Well, it was basically 12 and a half wonderful years, roller coaster years with ups and downs of illness as well. But we got promotions and played under some fantastic managers. It was really good. Moving up north was a big challenge at first, because I came to Burnley in '91 when I was 16, and it was a big move. I'm down, born in Brighton, right on the south coast.
Yeah.
So to move up north, it was a long way at a young age, and it sort of was a bit of an eye opener those first 6 months. But it sort of, I grew up quick. I had to man up. It was one of those things back then, and it was a big learning curve those first few years. YTS at Burnley, getting your pro contract under Jimmy Mullen first few years. It was difficult, but that's what it's like. If you're a YTS in any life, not just football, you've got to earn your right to to move up the ladder.
Yeah, and you were joining Burnley at the time that football was undergoing a massive transformation at the time anyway, because, we just had the World Cup in 1990, and of course, Premier League was just around the corner. So all of this TV stuff was starting and things did you see football changing as you were going into it, as you were growing up, or was it just because it was part of what you were doing, you were so young? Did you just find it normal?
Well, I kind of found it normal because football was football for me as a youngster. When you're 16, 17, you don't think about the money side of it. You don't think about what's happening behind the scenes. But when Sky TV came in and took over, and it just, the Premier League just went so high and upwards. But the good thing about it was I was joining Burnley at the right time. I came in '91 when Jimmy Mullen had just taken over from Frank Casper, and they went on an unbelievable run, got promotion, and it was the start of the good times from Burnley. Going from 4th division to when I left in 2004, we're left in the Championship. So it was a good 12 years, but all of it was good news. It was all promotions, and left them in a good spot.
And did you, you say about sort of the end of your time in 2004. At that point, did you kind of feel like you'd taken on that role of senior player by that point? You became those younger kids coming through, or was it? I often wonder with footballers, does it feel like a job, or do you feel like the affiliation to the club and like you've got to take it forward?
Well, yeah, I did obviously feel like a senior player. I was at the back end of my 20s, heading towards the 30s. So I'd played a few games, and there was young kids coming through. I've been given the armband a few times by the manager, so I felt that responsibility. But again, at the time, it was the coming to the end of the ITV collapse. It's when money was starting to go away from football, and it was difficult for the football club. They were losing money every year, so it was a really, really difficult time. So I kind of left at the wrong time, if that makes sense. Stan finished as well. New manager was coming in, so we didn't know if we were going to survive or not as players. We didn't, if I'm being honest, I left under a cloud, if you will.
Right.
Because it was all done then on the phone. You didn't get to say goodbye to anybody. And it was an awkward one. But I try not to think about that. You try and think about the good times. That the other 12 years was fantastic. With promotions and so many games in the Championship and playing in front of a wonderful crowd.
Yeah, and you talk about playing under some great managers there as well. You talk about Stan Turner, what a career he had in football. A very controversial figure, of course. Managed at Bury as well. Managed a lot of clubs locally. But was he a bit of a character in the dressing room?
A bit of a character.
It's an understatement, isn't it?
No, I still speak to Stan. He's a wonderful man. He was a hard man, at times a difficult man to play under. You could have a good game and you could get a rollicking. You could have a bad game and he wouldn't say, and you just didn't know anything. He kept your feet on the ground. It was a challenge, and the word roller coaster under him was, crikey, it was understatement. You really didn't know what was coming. He went through stages of he was trying to give up smoking. Oh my God, it was the worst thing ever. We just kept buying him cigarettes, just keep smoking. It's one of those. But yeah, he was a character. He really was. But he transformed the club. He
Yeah.
brought in some experienced players. He brought in names.
Mm.
Ian Wright to the football club, Paul Gascoigne to the football club, and he put the smile back on the club's face. I think that was a big thing because we'd had a difficult year under Chris Waddle. Again, another superstar, but it was a difficult year for Chris Waddle. The club was in a bit of a mess behind the scenes, and Stan wasn't just a manager of players; he was a manager of the club. He got everybody organized. He got everybody singing on the same song sheet. So it was a good 6 years for Stan. Just a shame that we never really got that opportunity to get in the playoffs. We missed out twice by, I think, a goal on both occasions or a point. It was so close, but it wasn't to be. But Stan goes down in history as still, playing a big part in that journey of getting them towards the Premier League.
Indeed, and you mentioned singing from the same song sheet. That brings us very nicely onto your music choices this evening. Now you've gone for some. I think these are staple '90s classics. If you were going to put some sort of compilation album together of what made up the '90s, you definitely put "Don't Look Back in Anger" in there from Oasis. We started with that, but you've chosen as well "Design for Life" from the Manics. Particular memories of the song, or is it just a cracking tune?
Just classics, yeah, just classic songs. I love the '90s music. I think it's the best era for me. But I just had to be careful what songs I chose. I didn't want to come on and be soppy by putting any like Westlife or Take That on there. So I went for the classics really, and the Manics. You can't get any more classic than those guys.
Well, straight off their "Everything Must Go" album, this is "A Design for Life" from the Manic Street Preachers.